Hi, welcome to Skip's Corner, where I cover Nashville's baseball history and events and introduce you to players, coaches, and other fans. I was recently asked by Frederick Strobel of Burgundy Group Advertising if I had ever compiled a list of major league players who went to a Nashville high school. And I had started that process. Actually, Farrell Owens, who passed away a few years ago, and I had gotten to where we had started that list. We had tried to recognize those players at the Nashville Old Timers Hall of Fame, which is in the boardroom at Shelby Park. But when Farrell passed, I kind of put that away. There were other things that he and I had worked on. One was he had a list at the time of his passing of every Major League Baseball player who had made his residence in Nashville recently. Not for all time, but just recently. It'd be nice to keep up with that kind of a group. So I don't have that information. If you know of someone, why don't you shoot me an email at 262downright@gmail.com. But anyway, we had started this list, and so I don't mind telling you that there are not as many as you might think. It's fewer than I thought it was. Now, you have to remember that Brentwood and Brentwood Academy are not in Nashville, not in Davidson County, nor Lebanon, nor Mount Juliet. Some of the other outlying areas like Clarksville or Murfreesboro. David Price did not go to high school in Nashville, although he went to Vanderbilt. And Nashville connections to the major leagues often includes players from Vanderbilt, Belmont, and Lipscomb. Those are the ones who receive most of the attention, and rightfully so. For example, there are 50 players who played at least one game in the majors who played at Vandy, 6 from Lipscomb, and Belmont, 3. In stepping back and compiling a list of major league players from Nashville high schools, that number, well, like I said, it was just not as many as I thought it was. There are many schools over a long period of time who are no longer around, such as Isaac Litton North High School. And currently there are 33 high schools in Nashville and Davidson County. And that's kind of the criteria for putting this list together. Now, in such research opportunities as baseballreference.com, baseball-reference.com, you can put any player in that you think may have played in the majors or minor leagues. It's a little difficult to get to know how to navigate through that. But once you get there and pull up a player, it gives you all of his stats, where he was born, where he died, the date of his death, what high school he went to, in most cases. But the high schools is more of a recent addition. You can't find anything for players from way back, for example, in the late 19th century or the early 20th century, because those records weren't kept as part of what there's no database back in those days digitally, of course. And it's difficult to go back and add those in. However, baseballreference.com, it lists 26 players who played at a Nashville high school, who played in the major leagues. Now, there's another problem with that, too, in trying to determine it, because you may remember that last year, Major League Baseball elevated some Negro Leagues teams and leagues, and obviously the players in those certain leagues and teams, to Major League status. So, for example, we have where Butch McCord, who was from Nashville, played at Tennessee State. I know he went to Pearl High School. He told me he did. So now he's elevated to Major League Baseball status. So he's added in, and he may not be a part of the baseball reference number at 26. So we've added a few more as we've gone along. But anyway, I just kind of want to run these by. And let me say this about Negro Leagues baseball. It's a rarity for some of these players to be listed at baseballreference.com that shows their high school. And I've even looked through obituaries, through ancestry.com, newspapers.com. And if the obituary doesn't list it, it's very, very difficult to find it. Sometimes an article in a newspaper, for example, a sports writer may say so-and-so passed away. He was a great Negro Leagues player or great Major League Baseball player in the old days, and he's passed, and he went to so-and-so high school. So you can get information from that. It's not an exact science to be able to find these players out. But I do want to go through this list. My list includes about 36, I think, that I've been able to research and find, including the baseball-reference.com list. So let me go through these. Now, these are alphabetically by high school. And the first one is Antioch. Tommy Bolton was drafted by the Red Sox, played in the major leagues. One that you may not have ever heard of, not only the name or the school, is Dawson Tiny Graham. Wasn't a great big guy, but he was larger than a lot of guys. but he went to a school called Bowen Prep, Bowen. Hasn't been around in a long time. Started back in the late 19th century, I think. A name that you may recognize is Jim Turner. And Jim Turner was the pitching coach for the Yankees back in the 50s when the Yankees won all those World Series championships. I think 5. They appeared in 7 World Series. I think he was the 1960 Nashville Vols manager for that one season. Better known, I think, as a pitching coach. He left Nashville and went to Cincinnati for 4 years and then went back to the Yankees for a few more years before he retired. But his high school is listed as Cane Ridge. Now, certainly, Cane Ridge High School today is not the same Cane Ridge High School from back when Jim Turner went to school. Another name and another school that's no longer in existence, Bob Montgomery went to Central High School. He and his brother Gerald never went to the majors, but they played on the same team together. And when they built Antioch High School, Gerald went to Antioch. But he didn't play in the majors, so he was not listed along with Tommy Bolton. But Bob Montgomery was. Bob Montgomery was a catcher. He spent, I think, 9 seasons with the Boston Red Sox and became a color analyst. He's remembered as the last major league player to step up to the plate that wasn't wearing a batter's helmet. Wayne Garland went to Cone High School. Wayne Garland was a great player. Larry Schmittou says he was one of the best that he ever coached in the amateur ranks. He went on to the Baltimore Orioles where he was drafted. Then he signed one of those great big contracts, first $1 million contracts with the Cleveland Indians, but he developed arm trouble. Claudel Castleman was a great major league player. Played for the Nashville Vols also. He was a Donaldson High School graduate. Jerry Bell, one of our old timers, went to DuPont. The Baseball Reference, I actually sent a note to Jerry. Baseball Reference lists his high school as Jessup High School in Jessup, Georgia. And Jerry says, I have no clue where that came from. There's a misreference there somewhere. And he and I both have written to Baseball Reference to see if we can get that changed. Jerry was drafted by the Seattle Pilots. You may remember they had one season before they moved to Milwaukee because they did not do very well in Seattle, long before the Seattle Mariners. But Jerry got in almost 4 seasons, maybe a little more than 4 seasons with the Milwaukee Brewers. George Archie, not many people know who he is. He played back in the 30s with the Washington Senators and also with the St. Louis Browns. He was a first baseman. His nephew, Tom McBride, actually knocked on my office door one day and wanted to know if I wanted Uncle George's old scrapbooks. And undoubtedly his wife, Mr. Archie's wife, had kept these immaculate scrapbooks, and I kept those. One is for his minor league career, one is for his major league career, one is when he was in the service and played baseball, and one is when he came back and continued to coach. He coached some of those great Nashville Bridge Company teams in the City League for many, many years. If anybody ever wants to look through those, you certainly can shoot me an email. Frederick was asking me about the high school players that made it to the majors, specifically about Jim Cosman, because he went to high school at the same school that Cosman went, Father Ryan. Cosman was not born here. He came here after being born in New York, I think. He only played in a few games, but I think in his first major league appearance on the last game of the season for the Cardinals in 1966, he threw a shutout. I think it was a 2-hitter. And so his name kind of is in the annals of memory for many of the baseball people about that time. But also a graduate of Father Ryan along with George Archie. And then this is going to be a little unusual. This one, Fogg High School, Fogg, was formed after a high school named Hume High School. And later on in the 19th century, they combined the two schools and built a school on Broadway at 8th Avenue, which is still there today. Charlie Harding and Bill McTeague, some old-timers, went to Fogg High School. And I'll kind of jump ahead here again. Clyde McCullough, who was a great baseball player, went to Hume High School. There are 4 players who went to Hume Fogg High School. If you're still staying with me, that's Johnny Beasley, the twins Clarence and Claude Jonnard, Jonnard. And then Mickey Kreitner went to Hume Fogg. Mickey Kreitner was one of those guys who owned so many businesses in Printers Alley, was an entrepreneur to the nth degree. Now, let me go back, get back in order again. Goodpasture Christian can celebrate Logan Darnell. He had a pretty nice little career there for a while as a relief pitcher. Mike Willis, another one of Schmittou's favorites, went to Hillsborough High School. William Brennan was a Hillwood High School graduate. And then Jim Zapp, Negro Leaguer, who went to a school called Immaculate Mother Academy. Now, Jim didn't play baseball in school. I don't even think he played in amateur ranks until he signed up with the Navy in World War II. And while he was in Pearl Harbor, started playing baseball with a black team. And he was so good that he was invited to play with the white teams. And so his career developed into the minor leagues and later in the early 50s into what we call organized ball. Bob Tillman went to Isaac Litton. He was a catcher, had a decent minor league career, I think. And then we get the NBA. NBA had 4 graduates who played in the majors. R.A. Dickey, Ben Harris, Penn Murphy, and Andrew Triggs. Now, I said there were four. There was a player back in the early 1900s from Nashville named Noodles Hahn, Hahn, and he went to NBA and then to BGA. So I'll say that he went to NBA. That would add a fifth one for NBA players. Charlie Moran was a great player. He coached football at different colleges around the country. He also was an umpire after he gave up his baseball career. He was a great one. Then went to Tennessee Military Institute. Now, it's kind of cloudy about where Tennessee Military Institute. It may actually have been a part of Wallace University School or Bowen at one time. But I read where Grantland Rice, that famous sports writer, said that he played football with Charlie Moran at Tennessee-Nashville Military Institute, actually. And then one of the great schools for baseball, the last few years especially, the last 25 or 30 years, John Overton High School. We all know about Mookie Betts today. What a great player he is and sets an example for young people, I think. Charlie Mitchell and John Mitchell. Now, they weren't born in Nashville. They were born in Dixon. They lived in Nashville, but only because their mother was seeing a doctor who delivered babies in Dixon. So that's why we don't always see Charlie and John listed as Nashvillians in the major leagues. And who am I leaving out? Oh, Sam Ewing. Sam Ewing was a great pitcher at Overton also. Now we go to Pearl High School. I mentioned earlier Butch McCord, but Jim Gilliam, one of Nashville's favorite sons who became a Dodgers player, was a Rookie of the Year for the Dodgers when they were in Brooklyn, and then became a coach and had a heart attack and died. And when he died, the Dodgers retired his number, and it's the only Dodgers player to have his number retired who's not in baseball's Hall of Fame. Turkey Stearns is the only Hall of Famer listed that went to Pearl High School, and I mentioned him earlier, but also Bruce Petway, Bruce Petway went to Pearl, and I think Bruce Petway was real instrumental in getting Turkey Stearns to go to the majors. Bruce Petway was a great catcher, played with the Chicago American Giants. He's listed as one of the great catchers of all time. I went to Stratford High School. We didn't have a baseball team until 1967, and then 1968 was my senior year. We had no baseball players come out of Stratford High School until Michael Coleman was a great player, was drafted by the Red Sox. He's the only player out of Stratford. I mentioned earlier Wallace University School. It's a school, it was kind of a college prep school from back in the late 19th century. And there are two players, Bob Fisher and Johnny Gooch, who went to Wallace University School. Johnny Gooch was a great player, great coach, a catcher. He came back to Nashville after retirement and started Gooch Bat Company, started making bats and other woodworking items. But you may have a player that you thought went to a Nashville school. If you want to send me a note, once again, to 262downright@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to take a look. I'd like to publish this list that I have. I'll put it on baseballinnashville.com. By the way, you can go there now and find a list of every player who played for the Nashville Vols. And you can also find a list of all the Negro Leagues players who played for either the Nashville Black Vols, the Nashville Cubs, the Nashville Elite Giants, or the Nashville Stars. So I'm always happy to update those. I really want to update those things. But, if you disagree with me, if you think that I should take the list in a different direction, let me know. I'm also grateful that you would listen in. I'm grateful for David Nipper. It's my nephew. He's my digital guru who produces these segments, these episodes for me, and he does a terrific job. I'm always grateful. Once again, write to me. 262downright@gmail.com. If you'd like for me to come to your organization and speak, tell you about the knowledge that I have about Nashville baseball history, I'd be happy to do that. Until next time, this is Skip Nipper, and thank you.